Good evening, and Wakefield. Welcome to the Wakefield School Committee meeting of Tuesday, October 9th, 2018. Mr. Markham is been called away unexpectedly, so I will be chairing tonight's meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And we start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I'd also like to read our mission statement, as is our tradition. The vision of the Wakefield Public Schools is to graduate students who are confident, lifelong learners, who are respectful, caring members of their community. Our mission is to prepare students for college, career, and community by providing rich and challenging curriculum, high-quality instruction, and educational experiences that meet their individual needs and interests. Is there anybody from the public who would like to make comment tonight? Okay. Seeing no one, our Student Advisory Council, Talat.
So updates from Wakefield High School. This Saturday we have PSAT testing. Tomorrow morning the school is hosting the first student leadership meeting of the year, where they're calling all the class officers from each class and the rest of the student leaders, such as the school committee representatives.
That's it?
Yep, that's it for updates.
It's quiet. What about the marching band competition?
Yeah.
That is this Saturday as well. We have, I believe, 20 other schools coming to Wakefield High School. So, moving on for our consent agenda.
So move that the school committee accept the minutes of the September 26, 2018 School Committee Student Services Subcommittee meeting as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Right. Okay, ladies, did you have something for us?
Yeah.
Okay. We left poor Talat all by himself.
Sorry. So the Mentors in Violence Prevention meeting and conference is tomorrow. The Mentors in Violence Prevention Club is something that we started, and we are going to a summit tomorrow at Gillette Stadium. So I'm a part of Mentors in Violence, and I'm really excited about it.
Could you elaborate a little bit? What is it?
We're working to bring awareness to domestic violence and just to make it a better place in school.
Excellent.
Another exciting thing that a lot of the juniors and seniors are looking forward to is powder puff. So the girls can play football and the boys on the football team can coach us. So I know the juniors have started having practices and stuff, and I don't know, I think it's bringing our classes closer together. So I think everybody's looking forward to that, and I think it's gonna be the first weekend in November, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, we'll get more info on that sooner.
They've gone to practice. They used to just wing it.
So yeah, and the PSATs. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Perfect. I think that's pretty much it. Everybody's getting settled into their sports. Everybody's trying to make it to playoffs and hopefully make Wakefield proud.
Excellent. Wakefield's always proud.
Of course.
Any questions from the committee? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry we were late.
Budget items.
Good
Mr.
evening.
Piffling.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair. In your packet of the budget items for this reporting period through September 30th, I'm just going to point out some of the highlights. Salaries are all encumbered. You will notice that the line 4 aids line the special education aides and kindergarten aides, paraprofessionals. That line is severely overspent, and there's two reasons behind that. One is that we haven't gotten the SPED 240 grant in yet, and once that comes in, that line will be adjusted a little bit. But right now, until that grant comes in, we can't legally spend off of the grant, so we have to charge everything off to the local budget, and then we'll make adjustments once the grant comes in. So we've been approved for the grant. We just have to finish all the filings and then get their approval on how we apply for the grant. But it's an entitlement grant, so we're for all intents and purposes, pretty much guaranteed the money. Actually, the grant amount is in the budget. It is the SPED 240. Sorry, this is $869,000. If I can read this fine print, 869,277, 227, 237. So yeah, so there's $800-something there for us. So that will come into line. A couple other lines. The custodian line is somewhat overspent compared to other times of the year or other times in previous years. I'm going to probably have to account some of that for the Walton project. We had quite a bit of overtime staff, custodial staff, working diligently to get that building opened as soon as possible. So we appreciate their efforts, but it did cost us a little bit in the overtime line. So we'll continue to monitor that, and we'll see if it should trend back down now that, or at least hold steady. But we'll watch that line. The other line is line number 8, has not been encumbered yet. That's pupil transportation. My staff typically likes to get the first round of bills in for the year to make sure everything lines up before they do the encumbering. So they have assured me that once they get the bills for September in October, they will make the adjustments and get that line encumbered for the rest of the year. You'll also notice that. Oh, I'm sorry, back to the paraprofessionals. There are two reasons I said. One is the grant. The other reason is that we did have to hire some additional para resources this year to support some students who were either coming back into district from being outplaced or out of district placements, or some students who were at risk of going out of district. It saved us by not having them go out of district by hiring additional supports for them. So that's relative to line number 13, SPED tuitions. You'll notice that there is a surplus in that line, and that's because Ms. O'Neill has worked diligently with her staff and families in the community to get some students back into the Wakefield Public Schools. The offset is that we are going to have to spend some more money in paraprofessional supports, but it does save us in the transportation area. It also saves us in tuition. So certainly we always want the students to be here in Wakefield in their home environment, but from a budget standpoint, it also is a benefit to have our students here also. So. Other than that, we're still working on encumbering some things. Textbook line still got some money left in it, but other than that, everything else really seems to be pretty much accounted for at this time. So, any questions?
Any questions?
Just a quick question, Mike. So the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act grant, that's the one that's $860,000.
The IDEA, yeah.
Yeah. So we got a little bit more than you had budgeted, but if I remember correctly, was that grant down from the previous fiscal year? Did we get less?
No, that one actually is one that stays pretty steady or slightly higher every year. So it's that's not one. Title I has been.
Title I is the larger.
That's also an entitlement grant, but it's one that it depends on what level you come in at.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. Moving on to the grants, we've already covered some of it. We're still waiting on all of the grant applications to be submitted. So Title I, Title IIA, Title III, which I don't think we report here, and Title IV, which we don't report here, along with IDEA, are all federal entitlement grants. Basically, they tell us how much money we're going to get. We're happy to get the money, but we do need to still apply for it. We have to do an application, indicate where we're going to spend the money, how the money's going to be spent. So those applications are still in progress. I think having Ms. Morrow start September 1 probably put us a little bit behind on some of the applications, but her and I have met. We're working on the applications now, so we should be in good shape. Other than that, there's no surprises that I haven't reported previously in previous meetings. And then on to revolving accounts, everything continues to be healthy. School lunch we reported on last time. We had identified some money that hadn't carried in previous years, so Mr. Gill and I worked to get that carried over. Everything else seems to be in a very positive position. Right down to transportation, we're ahead of where we were last year. Circuit breaker has come in. Did I report that last meeting? circuit breaker number did come in. So circuit breaker came in at 1.3, I'm sorry, nope, 1.734 million, which is about $350,000 higher than we had anticipated, which is a phenomenal thing. But we always budget a little bit conservative on that line. That's what probably saved us a little bit last year. So we budgeted conservatively again, and it came in at 72%, I believe, which is far higher than what it initially came in last year. So that's going to be a benefit for us. If something happens this year and students end up having to go out of district on 45-day placements or an unexpected placement, we do have a little cushion there to absorb that without having to go to the stabilization fund. So, and if not, then it leaves us a little cushion for future years. So it's a very good positive. Certainly, it's a reimbursement on previous year, so that tells you that what type of year we did have last year, and the reimbursement really is a significant indicator of our special education situation from last year. So. Everything else there's really not much to report on the revolving accounts, but they're all there if you have any questions. Okay. Sounds great. And I do have 2 payroll warrants, warrant number 10 and warrant number 12, that I'd ask the committee to approve.
Move that the school committee approve payroll warrants numbers 10 and 12 as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous.
And we have one gift this evening. The gift is from the Wakefield Warrior Club for the Wakefield Memorial High School football assistant coaches. The amount is $9,951, and that money will be used to fund 5 assistant coaches for our various football teams, varsity, junior varsity, and freshman teams.
Okay, move that the school committee accept with gratitude the donation of $9,951 from the Wakefield Warrior Club for Wakefield Memorial High School assistant football coaches for the 2018 fall season.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And unanimous.
And that concludes my reports.
Thank you, Mr. Piffeline.
Thank you.
Item 8 is the chair's comments and action items. General comments, I didn't know I'd be chairing this meeting till about 6 o'clock, so I have no comments prepared. But I have a presentation from the WEF with Ms. Russell. And Ms. Guida, were you working with that, or you just...
If she, I'll answer questions if she
Okay.
needs me to.
So if we could walk into the
You
table?
can ask questions and you can answer them, too. You
Right.
can go back and forth.
Right.
I'm Elizabeth Russell, the president of the Wakefield Educational Foundation, and thanks for having me tonight. I just wanted to use this opportunity to kind of update you on things that are happening in WEF, and it's timely because right now is the essence of WEF really is the grant process, which you guys may know Colleen Guida. She is the director of grants, so I work closely with Colleen on the grant process. But first I want to just tell you a little bit about WEF. So we have, as you know, we're a nonprofit that supports the Wakefield Public Schools by providing enrichment opportunities for our students. We receive donations, in-kind donations, have support from the business community and sponsors from the business community for various events, and then we do fundraisers. The fundraiser right now that's happening, you may have seen this. It's our Wakefield Public School calendar that has some amazing student artwork, and it has the 6-day cycle and the early release days and professional development days. So we have a lot of followers who are eager to pick this up at the beginning of the school year. So that's the current fundraiser. We also do STARS, which is a way for parents to recognize teachers by making a donation to WEF, and then they get a handsome certificate, and we do that around the holidays and then during Teacher Appreciation Week. We also are the beneficiary of 2 different races. One is the first Saturday in November, the Run for All Ages. and one is, I think, the first Saturday in April, the Greenwood School Gator Gallop. We also do, at Valentine's Day, or the weeks around that, we do chocolate roses. And so those are kind of the highlights that our many volunteers help with over the course of the year. And the grant cycle, back to that, I think I saw these distributed. So this is information that we wanted to share with teachers, administrators, PTO folks, and it invites them to apply for a grant. The grant cycle opened in September and closes on October 26th. So this year, I'm happy to say that we have even more money in our grant fund, $30,000, that we hope to find grants that teachers have written that are worthy and meet our criteria, so that we can award all that money. Typical year is between 24 and 27,000. So, and then I also want to point out the other page that just gives you some examples of where the funds have gone. So these were grants that were written by folks in these schools and PTOs. So you can see that we've supported, I'll just name a few, the theater arts program, the Tower Gardens at the Galvin School, Galvin Makerspace, Museum of Science traveling programs, gardens in many of in I think 3 of the schools, Sensory Garden, a bubble workshop at the Doyle, a fairy tales program at the Doyle, and International Night, which is a district-wide event. So those are just some of the great projects and enrichment activities that folks have provided for our students. So it all goes to all the schools. We try to distribute that equally based on the number of students per school. And we have a grant committee that includes Superintendent Lyons, and that grant committee will meet in November to review all the applications. So, one more thing. Our spelling bee this year is on March 1st. So it'll be our 3rd annual spelling bee. That's back to the fundraisers. So we hope to see many of you there.
We need a table.
I think we need a school
Yes.
committee table.
Yes.
So if anybody has any questions, I welcome them, but thanks for letting me share that information.
Any questions? Go ahead.
Mr. Thank you for coming, and thank
Yeah.
you for all that you do. It's such an important source of support for our students. I was wondering if you might tell us a little bit more about what distinguishes an executive grant from program grants, as maybe a way to kind of elaborate a little bit more on the principles through which you decide, how to allocate the, relatively precious dollars that you have. You talked about equity among the schools, about one thing, but maybe you could talk a little bit
So
about
we're
that.
looking to award grants to innovative, enrichment, environmental. We have an environmental fund, and social emotional enrichment programs. So those are really the main categories that
Okay.
we're looking at. And then we're just looking at equity in terms of the number of students per school, just to make sure that every school is getting a equitable amount. But of course, it's really based on the grants too. There's some years that a school, there's only one grant from a school, which is part of the reason that we've been doing a lot of outreach, because we really want to increase the pool of grant requests. We get real quality grants that the teachers have put a lot of thought into and write up, and we just want to continue that, but get even more grants, particularly because we have more funds to give.
Right. No, that's great news. Thank you. And say, give a shout out to the calendar, which is just such a wonderful, wonderful showcase of our students.
Thank you.
Great
Thank
thing
you.
that you do.
How long is the process of obtaining the grant or applying for it and then finally receiving it?
So the grant period opened, I think, September 23rd or something around then, and it closes October 26th. So there's 1 month to apply. We hope that we're kind of telling teachers about it in the spring, hoping that even over the summer months, people will get some ideas and then put it down in writing during that 1 month grant cycle. And then it really depends on the program that they have. Some are awarded immediately if there's something in November, and some maybe an event in the spring. So throughout the whole year, really, we're responding to those when the event is occurring.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Lyons?
I just wanted to say thank you very much for your work and for funding the grants the way that you have. I think seeing, for example, the Tower Garden at Galvin and seeing kind of the maker space at Galvin and how many students are kind of involved, and especially the maker space now, I think it's just made such a real difference in their learning commons. It's becoming kind of the hub of the school where kids want to go and spend their free time, and I think it's by and large because of a lot of the grants that have been funded through WEF. So really can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
So
I was wondering what the numbers look like. It's not for dollar amount, but like if a teacher was to get an idea and put forth a grant,
Yep.
do they have a 1 in 4 chance of being accepted, or is it better than that? Or?
Well, it's been better than that.
Okay.
I mean, last year, I believe we granted almost all that were requested, and the 1 or 2 that we didn't grant, it was just that it didn't align with our mission more than that that we had to be picky. Like we'd like to have more grants.
I guess that's the message that I would hope to help get out there.
Yes,
Is that,
yes.
that if you apply, there's a real good chance you'll get
There
it.
is. There's a good chance.
I think I would add, just being part of the process and kind of, WEF has been exceedingly creative in partially funding grants. They don't want,
Yes.
If someone has a great idea, they want to come to the table and they've put a lot of time into it and it kind of meets the mission. It's innovative, it's going to bring something to the school. I think WEF really works hard to be creative about partially funding if they can, trying to partner either with the school district or with other resources to try to support what teachers want. What comes to mind is the Google goggles.
Yes.
The
Yes.
Google glasses or Google, and so that went to, there was a Greenwood grant initially, but that was a large grant, but what an amazing grant and, to fund. And I don't think that was fully funded, but I think it was creatively funded, and so that we could get that for Greenwood, but.
And actually, that was the PTO at Greenwood that made the request. So they really were, were very creative in putting together this idea and brought it to the faculty there.
Yeah. So that was great.
Yes, and another piece of it too is at that grant meeting, sometimes we see repeat grants, which sometimes is an indicator that we should talk and determine if that should become part of the school budget.
Right.
So I think that's an important part that we're doing
Right.
this together and identifying when something really is more of a school budget request. And so Mr. Lyons hears that request. He's part of that discussion.
Great. Any other comments? Well, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
The next item on our agenda is regarding the school committee retreat. We had tentatively targeted October 20th, but apparently that date is not working. So we need a new date. I don't know if, has everybody submitted to Tom what dates were available? Okay, I don't know, does the committee feels like we should try to get that resolved or wait for the next meeting? I mean, I feel like we keep pushing it off myself.
I just have a comment, if I could, Chris. I think it's important, if it works, of course. We obviously have clashing schedules, but that we do it sooner rather than later, because I think there are items that we need to sort of gel on and sort of set the pace for. And I know a couple of the dates that were on the new list were working into January, which seems a little late in our year, you know, to get started. So that's the only comment I have, is that it would be better to do it sooner if we could.
Okay. Yes.
Just ditto, I agree. Yeah.
And I know the response that I sent to Tom was that, you know, I'm available any of those December dates, but January is beginning of my travel season, so I'm out of the country for a good portion of that time. So do we want to just decide, I think, what the dates that were presented were in December?
I found them.
Okay, yeah.
So, November 10th,
Right.
December 15th, and then the two January 5th, January 12th, which won't
Okay.
work with you. So
Right.
it seems like November 10th and December 15th are the,
Does anybody have a conflict on the 10th?
I know I can do the last three. The November, what was it? No, sorry, 2 December and 1 January. I thought I had something tentatively on November 10th. I can get back to you on that, though.
Okay. But you could do the December, what was it, 13th, you said? 15th?
Yeah, yep.
Okay. I guess I'm interested in deciding on a date, you know, and if you have a conflict, then the next available was the 15th.
Do we know Tom's availability?
Well, he's the one that presented the dates, so I assume he doesn't have a
so he's
conflict with his own.
available on all of them?
let's assume.
Could I make a suggestion? How quickly, RJ, do you think you could check that date with us? Because
I would say by the end of the week.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. So we could say both of them work, if unless RJ has a conflict, and then we just go with December 15th.
Okay, so do we want to decide on the 10th unless RJ has a conflict, and then we'd have to make it the 15th?
That works for
It's
me.
fine.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so why don't we record it that way, Judy, please? That we're going to do the 10th unless RJ gets back to us by the end of the week that he can't resolve a conflict. Okay. School committee meeting in Boston with families, October 23rd or November 27th.
So the 23rd is a scratch.
23rd was a scratch because, mostly because, I mean, you're welcome to have it, but I can't make it to Boston that early
I think we
on
had
that date.
few
Yeah.
members that couldn't
Oh,
make it.
you
So,
had a conflict too, right, Greg?
right, and so we would prefer to have everyone there.
And then we decided that the 13th wasn't going to work, November?
Okay.
I'm asking.
Yes.
So, yes, you decided that wouldn't work? I don't know why it's not unavailable, is it like listed as an available
That
date?
date wasn't given by Joelle, I believe, right?
Right, and so we have November 27th was the next best date that was decided.
Okay.
And so,
So, again, we've been kind of dancing around this decision. I'd like to get it resolved.
so we have confirmation from Boston, our Boston location, the AME Church, and JP is ready to host us
On the 27th.
on the 27th. So we could, if people are available, we could do that.
Okay. So that works for me.
And what time is it usually? It's a little earlier, right, than 7:30?
Yeah, because they are kind enough to host like a small dinner for us. So it gives us a chance to kind of have small, intimate, like conversations prior to the meeting with
Right.
with the members of that community. So
Okay.
Usually 6:30 or so.
Usually
So-
6:30.
So you have an end time set for us that we?
Yeah, and then we also,
then-
the facility, we usually need to conclude our meeting by like 9.
Okay.
So we have to be mindful not to overload the agenda that night, so that we're able to have a discussion about anything that's on it.
So are we deciding on
We're going on the
27th?
November 27th. Okay, decision's made. Okay? And a reminder that the MASC, MASS Fall Conference is November 7th through 10. Have any members registered to go? Or anybody available to go?
I think Tom is going.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tom usually goes because work. You know, it's kind of like part of his job to
The
go.
end day is our retreat, possibly, maybe.
Huh?
The end day is our possible maybe retreat day.
Oh, well, yeah, but the Saturday will never happen, yeah. He'll be fine.
It's usually not much.
Yeah, it is.
Last day.
Yeah.
MASC does the retreat, right? They'll be able to come back up for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He listed it as a date, so. Okay. Moves on to item 9 for the superintendent's remarks, reports and recommendations.
Thank you, Chris. I just have one item tonight, and that is to just do a very, very brief kind of preview of our MCAS report. I shared as part of the documents for this meeting, just kind of the state preview of the assessment that we did this past year. So this is the second year of our next generation, or what they call MCAS 2.0, which they call the next gen test. And so we are using the new assessment in grades 3 through 8 for math and English language arts. And we are also testing in those grades 3 through 8 online. Okay, so they're computer-based tests in grades 3 through 8 in math and English language arts. In grade 5 and in grade 8, has continued this past year, but will change this coming spring, is we offered the traditional, they call it the legacy assessment, which is the traditional assessment that has been offered in science in grade 5 and in 8. And the high school assessments in 9 and 10 are also the traditional assessments that have been offered in the past. This year, this spring in 2019, will be the first year where they start to transition to the new assessment. And so I think that that's important to note. I also think, it's important to highlight again for people, the reason that we test. The state tests for 3 reasons. One of the reasons is to inform and improve curriculum and teaching. The second reason is to really look at how students, schools, and districts are performing. We use this data to create an accountability rating for schools and for districts. And the third reason that we test is for a high school competency determination. So students have to pass ELA in math or get a combination of scores in ELA, math, and science to graduate from high school. And so I just wanted to again highlight that information. And so next week, the week after next, October, at the October 23rd meeting, Kara Morrow, our assistant superintendent, and our director of Wakefield Academy, who's also responsible for district data, will be presenting test scores for the district. And so that will be similar to the information that we've shared in past years. So one of the things that I wanted to highlight tonight, which just to kind of split the time, because it can take some time to go through a lot of data, and it can also feel like a lot of information. It's kind of dense. One of the things that I wanted to highlight was just some information around accountability. So there's a new accountability system that's used to look at schools and to look at districts. And so what used to be our levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are no longer. They have categories that kind of relate to kind of meeting targets, partially meeting targets, or schools that need some type of intervention or support. And so the good news for Wakefield is that none of our schools or our district are in need of any targeted support or intervention. All of our schools are meeting targets or partially meeting targets in the new accountability system, which really looks at 4 categories. They look at growth, they look at growth in terms of student growth percentile, they look at achievement, they look at absenteeism, and they also look at kind of how kind of a lowest performing group of students are doing to make the accountability determination. And at the high school level, what they've also included this year is the number of students that are participating in advanced level classes. That can also include dual enrollment as well. But in terms of individual schools, that information will be forthcoming next week. I do think in regard to accountability, it's really important to note that one of our schools, Walton Elementary School, is a Commissioner's School of Distinction. That means that, that the state sets targets around accountability, and, very few schools in the state, exactly 52 schools across the entire state, have been kind of recognized in this way. But so in regard to targets that were set, they exceeded those targets by a lot. And so
Despite construction.
Despite construction, right? And so if you remember last year, if I know the parents and students remember it well, but the main office and the nurse's office was a trailer outside of the building, and during testing, the principal would have to go out and say, would you please stop drilling on our, ceiling while or on our roof, and so they went through a lot, but the kids really did an amazing job. And congratulations to the teachers. I think that this is really kind of kudos to them and really a demonstration of their hard work. But we'll be sharing more of that data next week. I just wanted to give a preview and include information in the packet to the school committee members in the event that you had any questions. So that's it for me.
Question?
Thank you, Doug. And I'm really glad. Well, first of all, congratulations in advance to the Walton School. That's really terrific news, and I did see that when the department released the information. And this is with the I raised this question with the also to my fellow school committee members. In past years, when we've gotten the MCAS data, really mostly what we've gotten is the Wakefield in comparison to the state data. And what I've always asked for, and unfortunately it's always been after we look at the data, but what I've always wanted to see is how we do vis-a-vis our DART districts. So in other words, the most, demographics, are in terms of comparing school districts the most important things. And so that DART analysis compares us to like districts in terms of size and number of students, low income, English language learners, students with disabilities. So you have a sort of set of school districts that you can sort of fairly compare yourself to. I don't know if it's possible to be able to do that analysis with these scores now, but I'd love to see something like that.
Yeah, I think we can include that information.
Great.
I'll be happy to provide that.
In terms of the accountability system, is that something that, I was just looking through the notes that were provided, and I couldn't find it in there. Was it in, and I just didn't see it, or?
So the information, the packet, the 21-page packet that I provided was just an overview of the next-gen assessments,
Right.
not on the accountability system.
Okay, I didn't.
And so I can
think
provide that information for you, Ann?
I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of our profile information can also be found online. If you go to the Department of Education, if you just go to Google, type in DESE school profiles, Wakefield, you can get all of this information. One of our community members sent a note and asked, could I provide the link? And I did that, and so they've already started to kind of work on the front side to craft questions that they're going to have next week or the week after next. I keep saying next week.
Next week.
But yeah. So, but yes.
I was just going to add, did everybody get the email from Representative Broder? Because that included a good summary.
Yeah.
I think it was a PowerPoint of the new accountability system. It was,
System, okay.
yeah.
So
it was a good summary, I thought.
The Commissioner of
Yeah, yeah.
Education provided legislators
That's right.
with
A
an
briefing,
accountability
yeah.
overview.
Yeah.
And he broke it down in a way that I think was very understandable.
Right.
And so, and one of the things that I like about the new system in regard to accountability is it really breaks it down well for each school. So it breaks it down graphically. So if you're a person that interprets graphs best, it also breaks it down in regard to data. So you can literally go down kind of and look at, what populations of students need support and in what area do they need support. Are they meeting projected targets? And so the other thing that was really stressed from the commissioner this year is because the system is new, that we not compare both student growth percentiles and accountability ratings from years past. Because what they do when they roll out a new system like this, a new testing system, they kind of realign testing thresholds, and they also realign accountability ratings. So, for example, about close to 92% of the districts in the state are meeting or partially meeting targets in regard to the new accountability system. And so, 4 districts that were needing support have been moved off of that particular rating based on the new system. And so there's also if you look at student results in regard to the distribution, it's almost like a perfect distribution, which again is what happens when they roll out a new system. It looks perfect. Over time, if the thresholds stay the same, it won't stay that way. But that's just some information. So.
I just have one question.
Sure.
So the students who don't perform, what happens to that data after we receive it? It's collected, it's analyzed, but do we have information based on how those children tested so that maybe additional services could be provided to them? I mean, does that normally happen, or is this something that we can put in place as well?
So that's a great question. And so students that often struggle, this assessment or one single assessment does not really, we know usually well ahead of time because teachers are so connected to their students where they need support. And they can often predict ahead of an assessment that, for example, a student in grade 3 may need help or intervention in regard to reading or writing or math. And so, but this is absolutely used as well, kind of in addition to data, for us to use as a check and balance. Yeah.
May I add, on the high school level where students score in their MCAS matters, there, if a student isn't making sort of progress towards that, then, the schools, and I'm pretty sure we do this as well, provide specialized instruction for that student to help them prepare, for sort of a retake of that exam. And then they're also put on, maybe it's for separate reasons, but an EPP as well.
Right.
Which also indicates what services and support the student needs within the class.
Right.
So even after the MCAS results are in, then they continue the services to help the child make progress.
Correct. That's at the high school level in regard to a competency determination.
Right.
If they don't kind of test in the proficient or what used to be proficient, now meeting or partially meeting, right?
Yep.
And so if they're not testing in those 2 areas, if they're in kind of the not meetings, that kind of third category, which used to be needs improvement, what happens is they get a second opportunity to take a retest, and then if they're still struggling, students are looked at and put on a kind of what they call an educator plan, which is the EPP, is what Ann's referring to. But they're put on a plan, and we look kind of holistically at grades. We look at their engagement, how they're progressing, and so there are kind of other qualifiers that we use, and students can continue to retest as well. And we look at all of that data to make the determination if they have kind of met the competency determination.
I just have one question in regards to that. If the student doesn't perform well at the high school level and they're not on an IEP, how do you increase services or provide these services for these kids? Are there red flags where it's like maybe we should have a meeting if the parents don't come to the school? Does the district start the ball rolling, or?
I think it happens through guidance and it happens through the schedule.
Okay.
So students can be scheduled in such a way where, we can give them that support.
Okay.
To make sure that they're going to have every opportunity to do the best they can, and we can provide them with as much support as they need.
Okay.
To pass that assessment.
Great. Thank you.
Moving on.
Thank you.
Was that it?
Yeah.
Oh, fast. Okay. Subcommittee reports, finance and facilities.
We have not met, but we have our first meeting scheduled for next Tuesday, October 16th,
Early morning, or are you doing evening?
7 p.m.
Okay. Labor, Tom is not here. Colleen, anybody on the, is ready movement on labor yet, or nothing happening?
We haven't set a meeting yet.
Okay. And policy, I have not called a meeting. I think that focus, not being aware of any pending policy issues, I think we should probably schedule a meeting to talk about the communications part of our mission. And I will get something out to some members this week to decide on a meeting day. And student services.
So, Student Services Subcommittee has met twice, and as directed, when we first decided to actually form this subcommittee, we have put together a mission and our priorities for this year. So I shared that with all of you. Did anyone not get one of these except for Mike? He didn't get one because I didn't have enough.
I'll give him one.
You can have this one. I can answer.
So I was wondering if you folks could just take a moment to review it, ask any questions, and then perhaps we can adopt this if we're all in support of it. I don't know, Chris, if that's a motion kind of thing.
I would just read it for the record.
Read the mission?
Yes.
Okay. So the mission of the Student Services Subcommittee is, the Student Services Subcommittee shall be established for the purpose of working with the administration in reviewing and evaluating policies and procedures in the conduct of educational, excuse me, I took out the word "in the conduct of," evaluating policies and procedures of educational services available to all students of the Wakefield Public Schools. Such services, subject to review, shall include, but not be limited to, coordinating, budgeting, and delivery of special education services, social and emotional supports, health and wellness, and gender equity, among others. We outlined our priorities as follows. We would like to begin a review of special education services by first reviewing all of the data and reports that we have available to us. And after the data, after we've reviewed those documents, then that will inform us in terms of what our next steps will be in terms of making recommendations or providing any direction to the administration. And then sort of parallel to that, we would also like to gather data regarding student services in general. we know what we know because we've, either experienced things personally, we've heard from families, but we want to develop an instrument to collect data in terms of student services in general so that we can see if there's anything that's sort of hidden or invisible that we're just not aware of, and learn about the types of services that our kids might be in need of, and trying to figure out ways to address that.
So, you want to make a motion to endorse
Oh,
this?
do a motion?
Do a motion to endorse it, or
Is that something I do?
you can.
I'm
Put you right in the spot.
I'm happy to be in the spot, I just don't have the right words.
How about this? Want me to do it? Okay. So move that the school committee endorse the mission of the Student Services Subcommittee as presented.
Second.
Okay. Any questions, discussion, recommendations? Yes.
Thanks. So thank you, Ann, and the subcommittee members for the progress that you've made on this. So I guess my questions sort of revolve around the general and the specific that is articulated here. So the general is reviewing and evaluating policies and procedures of educational services available to all students, right? That's broad.
Yeah.
And then we say specifically, services subject to review shall include, but not limited to, special education services, social and emotional supports, health and wellness, and gender equity. So those are somewhat specific. I guess what I was thinking, and I think I said this when we were talking about this this set of ideas originally, is I was hoping that that the specificity around the subcommittee's charge would at least include all of those subgroups of students that we know from data and history and experience are traditionally at a disadvantage. So those are low-income students, students with disabilities, students of color, and English language learners. So those are the categories, I guess, that traditionally school systems have looked at, who have needed stronger and more robust sources of support. So, and I'm just articulating that because I don't see that here. Mm-hmm. I see all students, which I think is important because we're talking about an inclusion model to make sure that universally all of our students are getting exactly what they need. But I certainly understand that you want to focus on special education services in the 2018-19 year, but I would just ask if it's possible in the mission of the subcommittee to identify those other populations of students as of interest and concern and potential focus for the committee over the long term. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. We actually sort of spent a while sort of talking about the areas. We landed on these partly because they seem to be encompassing sort of the needs of just about everybody.
Okay.
We were focusing on but not limited to sort of allow for groups of students or issues or things of concern to rise up as we review data or as things become apparent to us. Mm-hmm. I personally am not opposed to including these. Partly because you said, and I want obviously the other members to chime in, but partly because you said that they are traditionally the groups that schools will look to or look at to support. On the other hand, we wanted to also think about including students who are sort of, who need support and who are high achievers.
Right.
And
gifted and talented, if you will.
that sort of
Yeah,
thing. And
yeah.
so then it felt like it was going to be kind of a laundry list
Yeah.
of groups, and we didn't want to focus too narrowly in the mission. But I mean, that's sort of my take.
Okay.
Chris and Amy, and of course Doug were there.
I
So.
mean, we had a brief discussion, about the high achievers are actually those at greatest risk for suicide. And that's certainly something we want to be ensure that the Wakefield Public Schools is responding to and making sure that our students know that there are services available for them. So I think all of the things you mentioned are certainly valid, but they might be covered under the umbrella. And then moving forward, maybe that should be more included in the priority list than the mission. How do you feel about that? I'm asking you a
Chris,
question,
yeah, thanks, okay. Yeah, so I guess, I mean, I don't know. It seems to me that the mission itself should either be broad, right? So broad that we're inclusive of all the students in the system, and that you're looking at reviewing and evaluating policies and procedures of educational services to all the students, right? So you're either going to kind of accomplish this through a total inclusion model and then set your priorities according to, the school year, or you're going to identify those groups of students that we believe, or those goals that we believe we've got to specify and call out in the mission of the subcommittee. So I guess it seems to me a little bit of a hybrid. So, like, just for example, we call out gender equity, but what about racial equity, right? Shouldn't racial equity be just as important as gender equity if we're looking at a subcommittee at the policies and procedures of the school system? I guess that's what I'm getting at. It just seems a little bit too much of a. It lacks a little bit of clarity, I guess. I mean, I appreciate the progress you've made, and I think you've made a lot of progress from where we began. But I think it needs a little bit more clarity before, because I think the clarity will actually help.
The work.
The clarity in the mission will help guide the work, and focus it.
I mean, we just figured if we kept it broad and then used the terminology, but not limited to.
Yeah.
I mean, that we could make a list.
Right.
Or we could just make sure that we don't limit it to anything specific, so that it's open to all.
Yeah.
People, students who may need services or assistance. So it was just like, you're either going to be very specific or keep it open and not limit.
Yeah, I don't disagree with Greg's point, though. I mean,
Yes,
you
exactly.
can't be specific to some things and then ignore the others. So
That's
we
what I
shouldn't
guess I'm
maybe we
worried
shouldn't be
about.
specific
Yeah.
to anything.
That's right.
I
Yeah.
think, one of the things I'm thinking about is we try not to focus on groups. We try to focus on types of services, I
Yes.
guess. And maybe, maybe gender equity is maybe the one thing that might be a little too specific.
But I think your point about equity, I think, is applicable to our vulnerable populations.
So should we
Just take out the word gender?
Gender and just include the word equity? Would that help?
Yes, it would.
What do you think?
I agree.
Would it be appropriate to include, I just had the word vulnerable written down, and then, we had used that language when we were discussing so I feel like that is a very broad word, and it lends itself to those who feel open to needing support.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that word can be used in the mission as well.
We thought about that, but then it felt too narrow in
Yeah.
a way. But if we do take out the word gender, would we just put sort of
equity.
Equity.
educational equity, or
Or just equity, period.
or just plain
Equity's fine,
equity?
yeah.
Okay. Is that, I don't know if that,
Because it's actually more than just educational. We're looking for the whole school experience to be equitable, which includes their time at recess or their sports
Extracurricular
activities or,
resources,
right.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate
We should
you
ask-
considering
You
that,
think we should
yeah.
ask the students what they think?
Sure. Put them right on the spot. Were they listening is the question.
Well, they don't, yeah, it's tough too, because you don't have the text in front of you. That's
Yeah.
the other thing.
Nice of you. Did you write it down?
No, I was writing now.
What were you thinking? What was crossing your mind during the conversation?
I liked just changing it probably to just equity to make it more broad. I would think. So then, yeah. So everybody would be included rather than feeling like they weren't.
I also think that making it just gender equity could, especially like be too specific, and I agree with that.
So it's sort of, I think as Mr. Liaco said, there's a fine line, because everything we do here in Wakefield Public Schools is student services, right? So it's sort of hard to tease out in some ways what it is that, our subcommittee wants to do. But what we want to make sure is that if there's a need, we want to be able to have some processes in place so that we can investigate. And so that's what our subcommittee is going to try and do. So that's, yeah.
Could you ever say, I heard him mention racial equity, so could you ever say gender and racial equity, or would that be too specific?
I think,
Might be still too specific.
I think,
Okay.
yeah,
I was just-
I think that's a really great idea, Lily, but then I think it leads us to then thinking about, well, what other inequities are there, That's the box we were in, I think that's our
What about
conversation.
now you're putting the high achievers against the strugglers, and that, it's,
You don't want it to be divided,
yeah.
Well, and
divisive.
I was just going to add that we've done a good job of articulating what equity means in the system as a whole. So I think the word itself has context
Right.
within our instructional strategy and everything that we've done. So I'm happy with that, because I think then that gives you, as members of the subcommittee, the ability to look at equity through a number of different lenses and where those needs are, and then you can plan accordingly, so.
Right.
Yeah.
So we had a motion, we need to amend the motion to remove the word gender.
Gender, okay.
Can you make that motion?
Move to amend the original mission of the Student Services Subcommittee to omit the word gender.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the amendment? Okay, that's unanimous. And now back to the original motion, the amended motion now, to endorse the mission.
Move that the school...
That's already, no, it's already been
Oh.
made.
You don't have to reread it, we've
So,
already got it.
all those in
I guess
favor?
we have to just vote.
Yes, we're set.
Thank you, and thanks for considering my point of view.
Okay.
Thank you, Greg, for bringing up that point. I appreciate it. I do.
Okay, our next scheduled meeting is Tuesday,
Chris,
October 23rd.
I'm sorry, Chris, sorry.
Yes.
I just wanted to know, I had a couple, just from your notes from your first meeting. Are we able to ask, they don't have to do with the mission, just a couple questions on the notes. Is it okay to ask questions, or?
The minutes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I didn't know if it was appropriate.
No.
I just wrote a couple of things down, just from the discussion that you had, and how in reviewing data and reports and where the data and the reports come from, especially with, Doug, you had spoke about the invisible cases and invisible populations, and how we collect data specifically regarding, those types of populations. And I just kind of, a couple things came into my head, like we have resources like Wake Up and the Wakefield Police and our Boys and Girls Club, who have maybe some other ways or other data that we aren't, and I know that we already work in collaboration with them, and I wasn't sure with our Student Services Subcommittee if that's also something that you might look into collaborating with, getting data. I actually just went to the Boys and Girls Club Gala, and you listen to the students there, and nothing. They may not expose themselves as much as they do sort of in that trusted environment. So it is, when I was reading this, it sort of clued me into those collaborations, and maybe they can provide a little bit of that invisible data and that from that population. So that was one thing, and then also. In terms of understanding how much, I think, Amy, you had spoke to this, and then the SPED 101 was suggested, I think, for the members, but in terms of how much parents understand about special education, and I know we have CPAC, so I didn't know if there was going to be collaboration with our CPAC to better understand the parents and parental education around exactly what special education is. So I think those were the two major points and questions that I had.
Yeah, I think blending or somehow bringing the two groups together, like the CPAC, so that they could maybe we could create some sort of a forum where we can just create conversations.
Right.
And listen to comments, questions, concerns. I just think everybody would benefit from that. So it's on my list.
Yeah.
I think our initial focus was on making sure we understood ourselves, all the programs that are in place, and
Right.
So,
Yeah, that's what the SPED 101
Yeah.
spoke to.
So-
was making sure that
and then that would be like the next step.
right.
Which I really appreciate you thinking about all of these outside kind of, terrific resources for us to draw on, as we continue to gather information and data. Some of it, can be like hard data, numbers, et cetera, but the anecdotal data can be really powerful as well.
Yeah, I know it's confidential, some of it, but sometimes you can have those, sharing clauses that if it's a Boys and Girls Club or whatever, that they are able to share information if they have consent. So it was just something that, only because I had just gone and I was like, like these are kids who might, and students that they don't expose, all of the things that they're struggling with maybe in the school environment, but they do expose them to a trusted environment.
And it certainly enables us to understand the process. Maybe it will give us a better understanding as to why maybe services are needed.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
The other piece of data that I thought of when I was looking through those minutes too was the youth risk behavior survey. That's another one, and I don't know if they disaggregate it by, some of these student subgroups, but certainly we get terrific information from that could feed into some good recommendations from that subcommittee.
Excellent, be great.
Thank you.
Okay. School committee comments. We want to go alphabetical. Let's start with you, Greg.
I don't have any comments, but I just want to say thank you to Chris for serving as Tom's understudy tonight. You did a very, very good job. Appreciate it.
Ann.
I Actually, I want to thank these guys for coming here tonight, the students, and for you, Chris, to actually pointing them out and drawing them into the conversation. I sort of forget, if they're not around the table, that they're there. So thanks for hanging out with us for the night, you guys. This was really terrific. Appreciate it.
Amy?
And I would agree as well. It's nice to actually hear your voices, and, we value your opinions for sure. So thanks for coming. Thank you.
RJ?
I just had a question, Doug. I did get your emails about updates on the Doyle.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the work on that so quickly. That's great. I just want to see if there was any updates over the past couple of weeks. Has anything else going
On
on with Doyle? Yeah.
I think things are, the changes and room assignments have worked well. I think they've worked well for staff, and I think they've worked well certainly for students. And so that's just the very quick. Yeah.
Awesome. Appreciate you doing that. And then also just has there been any feedback about the gym size at all? Because I know that was one of their other concerns as well.
So
Just kinda
they,
curious.
last Friday, had an all-school assembly right in the end of the gym. And so they were able to pull that off. And so we've also cleaned some, with the reassigning of rooms, so we were able to kind of clear out a lot of the stuff that was in the end of the gym. And so that has actually made more space. So I think it's going well.
Awesome. Thank you for your
Or as
work
well
on
as
that.
it can in a small school.
Yeah. Thank you.
As a qualifier, but thank you for your words.
Colleen?
I just want to thank all of our guests for attending and participating. And also, just thinking while you were talking, RJ, to Doug, it's just it's really nice to hear, I know it's not the end result and it's not the culmination of things, but it's working together. And I think that's just a great lesson that it's only been a few weeks, really 4 weeks since we've been here. And we've had, a couple of things, but I think patience and collaboration. So thank you for working with the parents and the community and the teachers to keep everyone sort of on the right path. So I appreciate that. And the parents and community as well.
Anything from our administrators?
Mike?
I was just looking to see if there was a Red Sox update. Nothing yet, so we're good.
So I think just one last comment. Thank you to the students. We are always, always, always better with your voice, in our conversations, right? So, and you guys are really the best. Appreciate it. Much, much appreciated. So thank you.
I have nothing new to add to that. Thank you for hanging out and participating. That's why, we value your input greatly. Just another reminder that, the NESBA Marching Band Festival is this weekend. You've all received invitations. Note that, the competitions in Wakefield have become one of the premier events in the marching band circuit in the state. They all like to come to Wakefield. We're considered to be one of the best run shows around, and that credit goes to the Wakefield Music Boosters. They really get it down like clockwork. Looks like the weather is turning in our favor. It was looking kind of iffy for a while, but it's looking much better. And we had to start the program at 3 o'clock in order to fit in all the bands that wanted to come.
Wow.
So I think Wakefield should be very proud of that fact. With that, I would like to get a motion to adjourn.
Move that the school committee adjourn its meeting of Tuesday, October 9, 2018.
Second.
All those in favor? That is unanimous. Meeting is adjourned.
Nice job.